Right, hi guys, welcome back for the second video. This is exercise 2 of Practical 2, and as you can see, this should really look familiar to you because it was the INF164 exam. And basically what we wanted you to do was to do the exact program but using methods. Okay, so as you can see, there's a lot of slides telling you what to do and where to use the specific methods. Alright, I'm quickly going to run through them with you, but we already did this in class, so I would expect you to know exactly where I'm scrolling because there's a lot of scrolling going to be done because it's a kind of a lengthy program. So apologies for that, but I assume that you already did this, but I am just going to explain it to you again so that either if you lost me in class or something happened and you weren't in class, it's fine. I'm quickly going to jump to it and explain everything in more detail to you, or well, I'm going to try to. Okay, so here we have our solution. I'm not going to show you the memo of the INF 154 because there are a lot of ways how you can do that. So I'm going to show you the memo of the most recent um, program for this exercise, or well, basically the memo. All right, so as you can see, we have a reset all fields method, we have a populate list box method, sum of numbers method, and check user answer. Okay, cool. So what the reset all fields method does, it clears all the fields and resets the counter. All right. Populate list box, it adds the correct number of random integers to the list box. Okay, and then sum of numbers, it calculates the sum of the numbers in the list box, and it actually should, I think, provide a result back to the user, but we'll get to that now. And then check user answer, yes, compares the sum with the user's answer and displays the result. Okay, apologies. So you are checking the result in the check user answer. All right. Okay, so as you can see, there's a hint. None of these methods use out or ref parameters. Okay, that will be taught to you in class by the lecturer. Okay, so now you can see the play buttons event handler, the timers tick event handler, which I think literally it stays the same. It remains the same. You change nothing inside this event handler. Then we have the done buttons event handler, which contains two of the methods, of the four methods. Yes. All right. And then also the play button also actually contains two. All right. So it's equal. Cool. So let's start. So immediately, as you can see, we want to clear the fields once we hit the play button. All right, which makes sense because you won't want to play with other values still in the controls. Okay, so we want to clear everything once the play button is clicked. All right, so as I said, apologies, there's a lot of scrolling going to be done here. So let's scroll down to reset fields method. All right, so here's our method. As you can see, it's a void. So it has no value that it returns, but it still is doing an action in terms of where you are calling the method. So reset all fields, when you call that, you are clearing the list numbers, the list box. You are clearing the timer, or you stopping the timer, and the text is set back to 10. The count is set back to 10, meaning that the timer is being reset, and then the answer is the text box of the answer control is also cleared. All right, so if you scroll up, okay, so if you scroll up, all right, so basically all this code is being done here in one line. But the cool thing about this method is, sure, it might look redundant. Why would you just not put that in instead of just calling the method? The cool thing about this is this method can be called anywhere, anytime. It can be called in the done button, the play button, if the form is loaded even. So it is not redundant, guys. Please don't look at it that way. All right, so the next method we are going to look at is populate list box. All right, next, or as you can also see, it returns void. So it has no result, or let me say return. It can't return anything. Wow, sorry. don't want to confuse you guys now. But you can't do that because it's void. Alright. So you can't even, let's rather say random num. Okay, so I want to show you this because it returns void. A return keyword must not be allowed by an object expression, meaning that is a lot of formal words, but that means, guys, that you can't return anything if your method is of type void. Okay, cool. So what does this method do? It checks. Okay, so first let's check int num. All right, so we have one parameter which is of type int. Okay, cool. So again, I'm gonna scroll, but where did we call that? So populate list box was called here in the play button. All right. So call method to populate list box with the required number of integers. So guys, read your comments. As you can see here, this is important. Okay, so populate list box. But we have a parameter and it was num. It was called num. Remember that now. Cool. So num of numbers. So we have a default value of 5 because 5, 10, and 15. So 5 was easy, 10 medium, 15 difficult. All right. So we have our if statement. We check, okay, the user checked, let's say easy. Okay, so now num of numbers is equals to 5. Okay, cool. So as you can see here, we are passing the value 5 as a parameter in this method. Okay, so what does the method do? Cool. What the method does is that it creates your 5 random numbers that is going to populate or be populated into the list box. Okay, so you can see your random object and then your integer called random num. All right, but now we have a for loop. In this for loop, we need to start somewhere and end somewhere. Otherwise, it's going to be an infinite loop. So what we, as I said previously, remember guys, you need to keep your heads together now with me. So we have int num, which was passed as num of numbers, which we said was 5. Okay, so int num in this case will be 5. So in the for loop, we start at 0. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is, and num is 5. So we are going to stop at 4, which is ultimately 5 numbers that is going to be generated. Okay. As you remember, I'm not going to teach you the random objects because by now you ought to know that. So random num is that integer is equals to my random, the object name, dot next. Okay. So it is a random number between 1 and 20, meaning it starts at 1 and anywhere to 19. Okay, cool. So I hope you guys understand this. And then literally we just assign it to the list box. So lst numbers.items.add convert.toString random num. Okay, so in every loop of the for loop, we are creating a random number and we are going to display that number in the list box. And then ultimately, all of this is being done when we call the method here in the play button. Okay, so the exact same thing goes for 10 and 15. Okay, so what we want is, let's for example say you were brave and you want to do the difficult level. So then num of numbers is going to be 15. 15 is the new value of num of numbers. Okay, so now we go down and then we check. Okay, num is technically the value is passed through as num and the value of num is 15. Okay, meaning that in the for loop we are going to have 15 loops because we start at 0 and I is less than num, which is 15, so we end at 14. So it's up all the way from 0 to 14, which is initially 15 numbers, and then in each cycle loop we are going to create a random number and we are going to display that number. Okay, alright guys, that is basically straightforward for the populate list box method. Okay, Then we have your timer that you enabled. Okay, also very straightforward. If you click play, then obviously you want your user to play it or play the game either. Okay, so now we have the timer tick event handler. All this code is happening every time the timer ticks, depending on the interval value of that timer. But I think for now this is seconds, so it's 1,000, the interval value. I will show that now. I just want to confirm before I run the program, then you will also see what I'm talking about. Okay, cool. So now we have the done button. So hopefully you will also recognize this. Okay, so we have try and catch. That was explained in the previous class or the last week's practicals. And basically, in essence, what this is we are trying to do this code. Okay, if there's an error or the program crashes somewhere here, we are catching that error and we are displaying a nice message box instead of a program crashing and tears flowing. Okay, cool. So why are we doing this? This is in the case where the user, this is basic validation, guys. So this is being done in case the user in a way forgets, he's so keen on playing, he clicked the done button without providing a number or an answer in the text box. Then it's null. We can't use that value, and then the program is going to bomb out, and you are going to wonder now, why is it not working? It's because you didn't give a value as a answer. Cool. If that happens, we try this. If this code works, great, brilliant, then everything works. The user actually provided an answer. But if he or she or they didn't, then we need to provide a more diplomatic approach than rather than the programming crashing. Then we just display a simple message box. Okay, so that was being done. But what are we doing in this try catch principle? So if we click done, then you need to check the answer. All right, and then we also need to see the sum of list box values, or to actually calculate that the sum of the numbers, as we said here. What was all the okay, cool. So sum of numbers and check user answer is what we're going to do now. So sum of numbers, apologies, calculates the sum of the numbers in the list box, and then check user answer compares the sum with the user's answers and display the results. So that is what we're going to do now. Okay, so as you can see here, sum is being set to sum of numbers. Okay, cool. So let's go check. And as you can also see, sum of numbers has no parameter. If it's empty like that, it has no parameter. But you can also see it's a method because of that, those two brackets giving it away. All right. So let's quickly go check what sum of numbers, what we did there. All right. Okay, so sum of numbers. As you can see, public int, so the method is of type int, meaning we are going to return a value of type int. Integer, sorry, I'm saying int, it's shorter, whatever, but integer, int means integer. All right, so what we're doing in that method is the following. We say int total equals to 0 because we start at 0. Every time that you click done, it should go back to 0. Otherwise, your total is going to be calculated with the previous totals. Okay, so you have to set the total back to 0 every time the method is called. All right, now there's a for loop. In this for loop, we have int I equals 0, I is less than list numbers dot items dot count, and then we increment I. Okay, cool. So basically that is, we check the amounts of numbers in the list box control. All right, so now we say total plus equals, and then we take every value of each number in the list box. We loop through them, and then we add that to the total in each loop. Okay, and then in the end we have our total, the total. Okay, so for example, if we have the first element will be first number is 5, the second number is 5, and we continue, and let's say for example it's easy, there's 5 numbers and each number is 5, then the total is going to be 25, because 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 is 25. What I just said now is being done here in the for loop. Okay, cool. So important here is this: we count the amount of items in the list box, and then we go and check what the value is of that item, as you can see here, I, and then we count that to the total variable, which is 0, and then in every loop we increment the total by what the number value is, and then we return that total. Okay, alright, so I'm going to scroll back up again, and as you can see, sum is equals to sum of numbers. We can set that equal to the method because the method returns a value, so basically the method holds a value inside it. Okay, so sum is equals to that. For example, let's say for my example, all 5 numbers, we selected easy, and all 5 numbers by some chance got randomized by 5 5s, and now the total which was used in sum of numbers is equals 25, so now sum is equals to 25. Okay, alright, the next method that we are going to use is check user answer. Alright, now you can see again we have 2 parameters, and the cool thing about this is we are going to use the sum that we just assigned or just got assigned to the number or the value we received from the sum of numbers method. Okay, and the second parameter is answer, which the user provides. Meaning, guys, that is also one big reason we are doing the try catch, because if the user didn't provide an answer, then we can also not do this method. So it's always important to do your validation. It really seems redundant sometimes, guys, but it's in the end, for your large and really hectic programs, validation is really necessary, because one simple thing that's out of place can change the whole of your program. Okay, cool. So let's come back to this last method. So check user answer. So now we are going to use sum, okay, and then obviously also the answer that the user provided. And we want to check if it's equal to one another, and to see either if they are a genius or if they need to go back and calculate it again. Okay, so let's scroll down, and I assume it's going to be here at the end. Yes. Okay, so it's void, so we're not going to return anything again. Okay, and another thing, guys, is as I explained in the video of the first exercise, of the translation exercise, you can see public, public, public. Every method that we use is public, meaning that it's accessible by the user. Okay, so you can use that method in this program in other scopes as well. So it's not private, it's public, meaning that it's accessible. Okay, all right, that said, let's quickly jump into the last method to see what it should do. All right, okay guys, I'm gonna cut and paste this, because there's a lot of things that I should explain, and it's not easy doing so. Scrolling every time, you are not gonna keep up with me. Alright, so now we have our method here, and we call the method here in the done button. Click event handler. Alright, so we are passing through 2 parameters with each having values. Okay, so in this case we call the parameter here. You can call the parameters here when you initiate or write your method. You can call it anything. You can call it total, user answer, x, y, whatever, as long as it makes sense to you when you use the values in your method. Okay, that being said, we have int total and int user answer, but we are not returning anything, but we use integer values as parameters. Okay, so doing that, we are testing. So guys, if you check something or if you want to compare something, it's usually an if statement. So in this case, we want to compare user's answer with the sum and display sorry, we compare user's answer with sum and then display the appropriate message back to the user. Okay, so doing that, we have if total, which we are declaring in a sense here, that is your parameter. Then we are going back. We want to see what are we working with? What is, when we call the method, what is the total? So in this case, sum is being seen as the total. All right. And then sum was also set equals to sum of numbers, which was also returning a value. You need to keep your head here now, guys. It's really important. It's really easy to get lost. Okay. So in a sense, the total is what the program calculated, what was given. But now the user also needs to check or provide an answer so that we can compare the two values. Okay. So total is what the actual sum of the numbers is. Wow, okay. All right, and then we want to check if the total is equals to user answer. Now user answer is the second parameter, and the second parameter, the value of the second parameter is here, is given as answer when we call it. And the answer here is what the user provides. Okay, in this line, int answer equals convert.to int 32 text answer dot text. Okay, cool. So the user's value that we provided is given into this the method as a second parameter, and then the second parameter is here the integer, the user answer, and then we compare the actual sum if that is equals to what the user provides. If that is true, then we just provide a simple message box. Else, meaning if this is not true, if the user provided the wrong answer, then this the basic message box is being displayed. Sorry, the sum is, and then it's given the total, because the total here you can see is given as the sum. So the computer is never wrong, so it will give you the actual sum if the user provided the wrong answer. Okay. Okay guys, and that is basically what we had to do. We did, as I said, we did this in class, so I assume that you were in class and that I was explaining to you actually what was going, either me or Brandon. And this is just a basic, just a catch up of what we did. Always remember, guys, it's really important to understand the parameter. Let's take populate list box method for example. So the important things to note when using methods is what type of method it is. Is it going to return something, or should it just do something and display values into a list box or give a message box, or should it actually calculate something and hold a specific value like this sum of numbers? So it's int, meaning we should return a value. Okay, so the type, the method type is really important. Void, int, void. Void meaning we're not going to return something. Int or double or string always mean that we should return a specific value. The second thing is really to note, and that is really important, is your parameters. So in this case, populate list box has one parameter. Reset field, sorry I forgot about that one, has no parameter. Sum of numbers also is an empty bracket list or bracket set, meaning it has no parameters. And then interestingly, check user answer, we have two parameters because we want to compare. Okay, so if you compare something, you have to have two values. And the two values here is what the total is, which the computer calculated in the sum of numbers. Here you can see. And then the user answer is what the user provided. And then we need to calculate those two values. And interestingly, we are basically returning something, but not a value. We are returning or giving feedback to the user in the form of a message box. Okay, cool. So if it's true that the user provided the correct number of or the correct sum, then he or she or they are or is a genius. Okay. Alright, and then message box dot show, sorry, the sum is, and then whatever the total was is being shown if the user was unsuccessful in providing the correct answer. Okay, so guys, that is all from my side regarding this. I assume also this was a bit easier for you guys because technically you have written the code for this program already because it was your INF154 June exam, and now you just had to do it in terms of using methods, okay, which is really a bit more easier in my sense. Okay, but all guys, that's all from my side, and yeah, see you next week. Cool, cheers.